My peoples! Good morning and happy Friday. It's Papa Ziti here. And if you're one of the probably millions of people who think that slavery was invented by the white folks from colonial America, you'd be dead wrong. But before we get into that, just a little bit of gameplay. Check this out. Oh no, guy in the window. Whoop! Dolphin dive to the escape route through the train. And you get paid off with a hip spray. That guy's probably really pissed. I'd be pissed. So let's get into it, right? Spike Lee has come out in the last week or so and gone off on Quentin Tarantino for his new movie called Django Unchained, which stars Jamie Lee Foxx and Leonardo DiCaprio. Leo, he is so dreamy. And it depicts, it's a story about a slave that was freed by a bounty hunter to help the bounty hunter go kill a bunch of bad people. And Leo's character is one of the bad people. He plays the stereotypical Colonel Sanders-looking Southern gentleman who owned slaves back then. But that is not where slavery came from. Let me say that again. That's not where slavery started. This is not something that was invented by, the people who rolled over on the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. Oh no. Slavery predates recorded history. And slavery in all forms. We're talking about just the, like we were saying, the good old American slavery, all the way to the caste system that you'll see in India now. And sex slaves all over the world. There's all kinds of slavery that still exists. And, but I want to talk about Spike Lee and him being pissed off at Django. It's his right. He can be pissed off. Now, he hasn't seen it. He's admitted that he's never seen it. But he wants to talk about how Quentin Tarantino uses the N-word. Which, okay, first off, how many movies have you made, Mr. Spike Lee, where the N-word is just sprinkled throughout? And if you're mad at Quentin Tarantino, does that mean you're mad at Mel Brooks, too, for Blazing Saddles? Because the N-word was all over that movie. Or is it okay if it's in parody, but not okay if it's done within, like, a historical context? I don't know. That's one. Think about that, Mr. Spike Lee. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Spike. Two. In one of your tweets earlier this week, you tweeted out about Africans being, or, the slaves being stolen from Africa. And while that is true, well, actually, it's not really true because they were bought and paid for the most part, from a thriving slave industry where that business infrastructure had been built long before any white folks that were eventually going to end up in America, came along. And I feel like there's a lot of people in the black community, and you notice I'm not going to say African Americans because I don't think I've ever been referred to as a European American. It's like I'm a white guy. So white, black, it's easier. So I hope everybody is cool with that. But I think it's a great disservice that when you talk about American history and you talk about the slavery period before the 13th Amendment, and to not include that part of the history is a great disservice to generations and generations of Americans who, that's an important part in understanding how it all went down. It's not like slaves just all of a sudden appeared here. They had to go get them. And it's not like these slave traders that were going to eventually end up in the Americas just kind of hopped off the boat somewhere on a beach in Africa and just ran out and, with their big potato sacks or something and just snatched up a bunch of Africans to bring to America. It didn't happen that way. And there are many, many, many historically accurate books where you can go kind of read about all this stuff and understand that while it's been kind of categorized as, Africans selling Africans, back then it wasn't really thought of that way. They were warring tribes. They were, groups that lived in one area that didn't like the group on the other side of the desert or mountain or savannah. And they would fight. They would war over all the things that we war about to this day, natural resources, money, whatever, people. So there were slaves. They would, after warring with the tribe, they would capture the slaves, and that was it. They would keep them, and then they would sell them. So that happened. But if you don't want to just, kind of immerse yourself in a good read about the history of slavery, all you really have to do is kind of use your common sense and think about this. White people did not want to spend any more time than they absolutely had to in Africa because of all of the disease. And if you wanted to travel to Africa today, just to put this in context, some of the immunizations that you would need to have before you showed up in Africa are hepatitis B, diphtheria, tetanus, measles, mumps, rubella. I don't even know what the fuck rubella is. Polio, hepatitis A. Ooh, this is a big one. Meningitis. Ooh, that just sounds evil. Rabies, typhoid, and yellow fever. Actually, yellow fever, there's some countries in Africa that won't let you in unless you've been immunized against yellow fever. So why on earth do you think anybody would want to stay any longer than they had to in the slave trade back then in Africa? No, there were tribes that had raided other tribes and that were very much a part of the slave trade and would sell them. They're already set up. They've got, booths down on the beach where they've brought in, for lack of another term, their latest catch of, a warring tribe, or, a neighbor or tribe or whoever they were enemies with. And sometimes there were actually, as the appetite for slaves in the States grew, they would go on raiding parties deeper into Central Africa with the, express reason being getting more slaves to sell to all these slave traders that were, not only going to America, but also Southern America and Europe as well. So I just wonder, and it makes me frustrated when I see these pillars of the black community like Spike Lee and others before him that don't talk about that part of the history. And I wonder, is it just shame? If we go back long enough in all of our timelines and all of our ancestries, we were either slaves or slave owners, our families were at some point, or maybe both. And to not talk about that, to not recognize that, it just further divides us. It further divides white people and black people here in the States. And I think it's wrong. And I think these leaders of the black community need to step up. So I'm hoping that I have some black subscribers. I'd like to hear what you think about this. Let me know in the comments section. 38.5, this is Papa ZD saying have a great day, and I will see you next time. Peace. Deep end.